All right, welcome to another edition of our College Sports Rush YouTube channel. It's a college football handicapping show. It's every Tuesday and Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Jimmy Ott along with Paul Stone. And we continue our conference previews. And today we look from a handicapping perspective and give you some picks, some future bets that are available right now as we speak at Bet Rivers. And we'll go with the Big 12 today, Paul. And breaking down the Big 12, the obvious, boy, just picks. I like to kind of create tiers, and break them. In most of the Power Four leagues have been four tiers. This, and I'm, it's no perfect way, but it is sort of a clear mark between that first tier and second tier, third and fourth. The Big 12, there's a lot of blurred lines and a lot of kind of blending. And to be honest, I could only do three tiers with the top five, and then I'm sorry, the top four, top six rather: Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Utah, Baylor, and Arizona State. And then the second tier of five, and then the last tier of five. You look at the win totals at Bet Rivers, and you're looking at the lowest win total is 5.5. The highest is 8.5. That is a very tight margin, and compared to like the SEC, where Georgia or Texas is 10.5, and Mississippi State is 3.5. Purdue and teams like Oregon and Penn State and Ohio State, a much wider gap in those. So we see that we see a big difference there, and everything tells us. And we just had to go back to last year in this newly formed Big 12, and there were tiebreakers that had to ultimately decide who got into the Big 12 title game. Arizona State had to win a multi-team tiebreaker, and all kinds of teams were in the hunt late. And look, we're in SEC country. I get it, but I think this is good for college football when you have relevance to these games. Conference champions got to get in. So when Colorado is playing Kansas and they're still alive very late in the season, and Kansas State and Arizona State are trying to keep their hopes alive, and so on. BYU is in it till they get knocked off in Provo by Kansas. So I think it's good for college football. But man, it's kind of the cannibalism, I guess you could say. It might be difficult again for the Big 12 team to get multiple teams into the college football playoff this year, Paul.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, without question, the SEC and the Big Ten are the two best conferences, the strongest conferences in the country. But with that said, I'm not sure that my favorite conference in all of college football is not the Big 12. And it's just that balance. It's just you don't maybe have a great team, a team that's going to win the national championship, but you have so many good teams. And you don't have, quite the bottom feeders, if you will, as some of the other leagues. So I really love the Big 12. Obviously, it's the year of the quarterback in the Big 12. We won't go over all those guys, but so many different teams have quarterbacks that threw for over 2,000 yards last year, some over 3,000. I mean, Sam Levitt back for Arizona State, Avery Johnson back for Kansas State. You've got Brocco Becht at Iowa State. You can just go on and on and on. So a great quarterback league. Looking back to last year, you were talking about the balance of last year, and it looks a whole lot this year like last year. But last year, you had four teams tie at 7-2. You were talking about the tiebreakers. Four teams tie atop the league at 7-2. And three more teams one game back at 6-3. So you had seven teams within one game of one another, and then two more teams back at 5-4. So just exceptional balance. I think there are seven teams that could win this league this year in no particular order. Those being Arizona State, Utah, Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, and Baylor. I think any of those teams could win the Big 12. And actually, my power ratings, there will be some separation as we start to get game results. But going into the year, as I stand today, the top seven teams in the Big 12 only separated by 4.5 points.
Wow.
So it's going to be another great year in the Big 12. Really looking forward to watching it here starting in another week or so, and really looking forward to talking about that league today.
So on a neutral field, and when they're not playing on neutral fields, I get that, but still, the top-rated team playing the biggest point spread would be 4.5 points.
Yeah, any of those seven any of those seven teams playing
Yeah.
one another on a neutral field, the spread would be 4.5, and we kind of have an example of that in this opener, just a little over a week away. I think Dublin, Ireland's a pretty good neutral field.
Yeah.
Iowa State and Kansas State heading across the Atlantic for Farmageddon. And that line right now, I think about 3.5, pretty much consensus line. Kansas State being the favorite. So just extreme balance in this league. Going to be really exciting to watch in 2025.
It's fun, man. It's fun. And I think it was important. And also, you got some good coaches. That's two pretty damn good coaches that are coaching in Dublin right there. We talk about Dillingham, who's really a hot name. There's no doubt about that. The one curious thing, Paul, so I have Kansas State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Utah, Baylor, Arizona State. You're including TCU in that group of seven that's just separated by 4.5. Is that right?
I am. Yeah,
Okay.
I like TCU. I think they're going to be better on defense. Have one of those outstanding quarterbacks in Josh Hoover coming back to Fort Worth. Thanks, Sonny Dykes is one of those coaches you're talking about. So I think TCU. They're not one of the teams that I would. If I drafted the top 4 teams most likely to win, they wouldn't be in that top 4 of those 7 teams. But I think they're a team that, with the right bounces and with that offense really revving up, could win the conference.
Played a lot of underclassmen last year, kind of decided to take their lumps, pointing to this year. Their schedule is much tougher, though. So it's one of the tougher ones and we'll see them right out the chute, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the standalone game on Labor Day prime time at night against that coach. Bill Belichick, the girlfriend, she's the defense coordinator. I'm not sure. So anyway, but that's a fun one. It's a fun one to say the least, to start the season off in that first 5-day full weekend, Labor Day weekend for college football. Let's start to a game. And Paul, you were on my radio show and you were talking about this. You were targeting this game for quite some time. I'd venture to say that you already have a bet on it. So we're talking about SEC comes to town in Baylor. Auburn is a 2.5 road favorite in that opening weekend, the Friday night game in Waco in that beautiful lakeside stadium there. And Dave Aranda, who is my neighbor, and when he was a defense coordinator at LSU, his words, not mine. This is my best roster since I've been here at Waco, and that's including the 2021 Big 12 and Sugar Bowl champion Baylor Bear teams. So here we go, Auburn Tigers, but you like the home dog in this one with the Baylor Bears and Dave Aranda, who kind of got off the hot seat with an 8-4 regular season loss to LSU in the bowl game, but in one of those teams in my top tier and yours as well.
Yeah, I really, like this Baylor team, and you are correct. First of all, I do have I've got more than one paper ticket on the Baylor Bears in this particular game. Looking at my end of season 2024 power ratings and 3 other guys that I kind of referenced for comparison's sakes, we all had Baylor and Auburn pretty well power rated the same at the end of 2024. Actually, if you average the 4. Baylor was just fractionally ahead of Auburn. And I really think that's the way it is coming into 2025. I think these teams are really, I use kind of a formula, not too complex, but the teams appear to be even. But we come into this opener and Auburn is a 2.5 point favorite. So I kind of think it should be the other way around. I think Baylor should be a little bit less than a field goal favorite. Perhaps the Bears favored by 2.5, but perhaps we're paying that SEC tariff. I hate to use that word in today's political climate, but I think we might be paying that SEC tariff that might be priced into it. But, talking about that Baylor team, and you touched on last year, it looked like Dave Aranda was as good as gone in early October. I think it was a decisive loss against Iowa State, maybe, if my memory serves correctly.
No, it was the blown Hail Mary again, Boulder. Yes, to put it in overtime.
The game against Colorado.
Yes.
And then they go on and they win their last 6 regular season games. They do lose to LSU in the bowl game, but in those last 7 games, they did Baylor just a touch under 40 points a game. So that offense was prolific. Sawyer Robertson and most of the pieces from that offense returned. I'll backtrack. They did get a piece of bad news within the last several days. Their number 2 running back, Dawson Pendergrass, a guy who last year rushed for almost 700 yards, averaged about 5.5 yards per carry, can catch the ball out of the backfield, real good in pass protection. believe he had a foot injury. In any case, Pendergrass out for the year. They do return their top rusher, Bryson Washington, who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, and many other pieces. But the Pendergrass injury is one to take note of. But they still, again, they got so many people back. Sawyer Robertson, their quarterback, a guy who originally signed with the late Mike Leach and Mississippi State out of high school, later transferred to Baylor and actually didn't even start last season as the Bears starting quarterback. That was DeQuan Finn, the transfer from Toledo. But Robertson took over early in the year, passed for over 3,000 yards, had a great season. He returns. Washington, the 1,000-yard rusher, returns. Their top receiver and return man, Josh Cameron, also back. And 4 starting linemen, offensive linemen, return back in the fold as well. So this is another great Baylor offense. They're going to put up some points. Their defense last year, that was obviously kind of their sore point. Gave up almost 29 points a game on average, gave up an average of a little over 400 yards a game. They need to get better, and I think they will get better. So I think Baylor really shapes up nicely. Looking at Auburn, they went 5-7 last year. 3 of their victories, though, FCS, Alabama A&M, one of those victories, then New Mexico and Louisiana Monroe. But they do reside again in the nation's toughest conference, the Southeastern Conference. So that's tough pickings there. And they're going to be better this year. And they got better through the transfer portal. First of all, they added a wide receiver coming over from Georgia Tech, Eric Singleton Jr. Over the last 2 years, he's caught a total of 104 passes. He's a guy who can stretch the field vertically, kind of a home run hitter. And then you've got their new quarterback. He comes over from Oklahoma, former 5-star recruit out of Denton Guyer High School, just north of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, that being Jackson Arnold, a guy who originally signed with Oklahoma out of high school. Things didn't go well for Arnold at Oklahoma. Had a fumbling problem, an interception problem. I'm not sure if he's the answer at Auburn, but I think he'll be the opening game starter. But in any case, it's going to be a big-time Friday night game. You mentioned it, McLean Stadium, the banks of the Brazos, Baylor getting small points. I like Baylor plus 2.5 over Auburn there at Bet Rivers today.
Hugh Freeze in his 3rd year was sorely. He did not have a quarterback last year. I don't know if Jackson Arnold is going to have more success at Auburn than he did at Norman, but because when you're a 5-star, you're certainly going to get your opportunity, and he did. But I mean, my goodness, I just wonder if Hugh Freeze is not quite the coach, the impact on those offenses that he did when he was in the SEC last time, because he was really a highly respected. He was good. Those Ole Miss teams put up a lot of points with his first stint as an SEC head coach. Let's go to the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and their win total is 8.5. It's juiced to the over at -143. Joey McGuire, high school, longtime in-state high school coach, and so they're kind of keeping everything in-state. His 4th season, he has had 3 winning seasons, his first 3 seasons. But, and as the new landscape of roster building, the NIL, the pay for play, whatever you want to call it. It was Texas Tech was the first Power 5 team at the time that came up with a plan. They played all of their players on their football roster. I think it was 20,000, and then the better ones or the more popular ones could get NIL endorsements on top of that. But they had a plan very early. Now they got a cannon in Cody Campbell. So my buddy Paul Stone is, he's learned me on Cody Campbell and his impact and what he sold his oil company for. And when you got to impact like that, you've got a plan and you're organized. What you do is you retain the players on your current roster. Texas Tech has a lot coming back this season. And then you add some key guys, and we're talking from coast to coast. They have added players and impact players who, were really pretty good. Some on some weaker teams, some on some, not so strong teams. I mean, some stronger teams and some on the weaker teams. But anyway, the point is they got a lot coming back. They should be 3-0 non-conference. I would be surprised. Oregon State, not what they used to be. And then also they play 3 of the 5 teams in the bottom tier in my schedule. Now they got tricky road games at Kansas State, at Arizona State, and at Utah. So those 3 are going to be difficult. They'll probably be underdog in those three, but they're winnable with this roster and with this staff. So the continuity of the staff, the continuity of the roster, the backing, and now they clearly have the biggest budget in the Big 12 of any football program, and not just Campbell with the football program. He's spreading it to all of the sports in Lubbock. But I like over 8.5 for all those reasons. I got a sneaky feeling that you're kind of watching. All of us are watching this closely, but you've been on this radar of things happening, things working toward this direction for a while, Paul, in Lubbock.
Yeah, I think people outside the state of Texas, of course, I live here in the eastern part of the state, and Texas Tech has always had resources that maybe operated slightly in the shadow of the University of Texas and Texas A&M, but you always knew that Texas Tech was kind of a sleeping giant out there in West Texas on the South Plains. And when the NIL structure became part of college athletics, you have a guy like Cody Campbell that just earlier this year sold his oil and gas company, Double Eagle, for over $4 billion. Again, not million, but the B word billion. And he loves him some Texas Tech Red Raiders, and they have certainly benefited from that windfall, if you will. So Texas Tech, to me, they're one of the more interesting teams, certainly not only in the Big 12, but in the entire nation, just basically because they're kind of an experiment, a poster child of how quickly a team perhaps can ascend maybe to the top 15 or top 20 programs in the nation. They certainly picked up a lot of guys. Defense is kind of where they had the most need for reinforcements, and they pick up David Bailey from Stanford and quite a few other guys. So they've gotten better. I think they're going to miss Taj Brooks, the running back, a big back who rushed for over 1,500 yards last year. He won't be easily replaced. But Texas Tech, to me, is a team that certainly could win the conference. They're one of those 7, and they're in that upper half. I mean, they're just they're a team that could really, if you told me Texas Tech was going to be in the 12-team playoff at the end of the year, I wouldn't blink. They need their quarterback, Bayron Morton, to stay healthy, or their big-time recruit who played the bowl game last year against Arkansas. They think highly of backup Will Hammond. He could come into play as well with Morton's injury history. But I like Texas Tech as well. Going to be really great to watch the Red Raiders and how they fit into this Big 12 puzzle.
All right, let's move on and talk about a return at his alma mater where he had all kinds of success. We're talking about Morgantown, West Virginia. Watch out for the couches, baby. But I think the couches might be safe this year in Morgantown. Rich Rod is going to be just fine at West Virginia, just not this year. I mean, this is, when you, especially with the transfer portal era, when you make a coaching change, and you make it a coaching change because you're losing. So the locker room is not happy to begin with. Then when you think your coach is going to go, other teams are contacting and say, hey, if they fire your coach, we'll have a spot, win, lose, or draw, whatever. And so when they fire them and they don't have they're not poaching your roster for the weak players. They're coming to get the few strong players that you have. And that's what happens. So no different to West Virginia. Even Rich Rod is bringing a bunch of his players from Jacksonville State. And Jacksonville State was a nice team. He overachieved there, but come on, that's not what you want to. That's not what you want to be a base of your roster in a Power 4 program. So, Paul, you're looking at the West Virginia Mountaineers. Under 5.5 is a juice to minus 155.
Yeah, I tell you, as you mentioned, Rich Rodriguez returning to Morgantown. And certainly, I don't think the second time around is going to be fruitful at the first, especially as you indicated in the very beginning. They have 52 new players on their roster, which is not unusual with the new coach. And they did have some big personnel losses. And like you said, they don't lose the players they don't really need, the extras. They lose their very best. One of those, running back C.J. Donaldson, he's off to Columbus to play for the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Buckeyes don't just take anybody. He's been a big-time player for the Mountaineers the last few years. And then maybe even more importantly, the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year, Josiah Trotter, son of former NFL great Jeremiah Trotter. He's off to the University of Missouri. So they've lost 2 of their better players in the program. Also got a bit of bad news earlier this week. A transfer running back from SMU, Jalen Knighton. Rich Rodriguez told the media, I believe on Tuesday, that it looks like Knighton is going to be ineligible due to some academic issues, not going to play this year, it doesn't appear. This is a guy who rushed for almost 2,000 yards across 4 or 5 seasons there at SMU, a guy also who can catch the ball out of the backfield. They would have certainly been able to use his services on an offense that's, going to need as many playmakers as it can find. They're going to be favored looking at that schedule, certainly a big component of handicapping regular season win totals. They're going to be favored in that opener that we see there against the Robert Morris Colonels of the FCS. But after that, they could be an underdog in their other 11 games. It's a pretty tough schedule, 32nd toughest schedule in the nation by one publication. They don't get to play Oklahoma State, perhaps the weakest team in the Big 12. Don't get to play Arizona. Don't draw the Wildcats either. Houston, another team projected in the bottom half of the conference, they don't get to play. And then they draw some of the league's tougher teams at home. So they're playing at home, Utah, TCU, Colorado, and Texas Tech. So it's just the way the whole thing sets up, just not very favorable for West Virginia. I cannot see this team going 6-6, and they've got to go 6-6 or better for us to lose this ticket. I think they're going to, if they're burning couches in Morgantown this year, it's not going to be in celebration. It's going to be in frustration. I like West Virginia under 5.5 regular season wins, minus 155 today at Bet Rivers.
Mattress Mac does need to expand into Morgantown, not just yet. So maybe in a couple of years, Rich Rod will get it right. He will get it right. And but it's not just this year. And again, there's so much the balance in this league, and there's not a whole lot of gimmies. So West Virginia with a tough one. All right, let's go to the Kansas Jayhawks. There is a lot of excitement in Lawrence, Kansas, and we're not talking about the basketball team. It's with the football team. So the football team played the last couple of years out. They were getting their new stadium done. Well, the new stadium is ready. So they will not be playing in a soccer stadium, will not be playing at Arrowhead. They will be playing in their brand new stadiums, and it looks awesome. They're excited, and that Cody Campbell. Well, we'll see Cody Campbell and Texas Tech with their money. And how about this latest donation? $300 million to the football only budget. So that's not even spread across. So no basketball at Kansas, $300 million, a new stadium, but they got that same old quarterback. We just hope that he has a little bit better health prognosis this year, and that is Jalen Daniels. Again, dual threat quarterbacks a lot of times is code for a running quarterback can't throw a lick. That is not the case. This guy's a true dual threat. He can beat you with his legs. He can beat you with his arm. I love his accuracy. I love his touch. He is a good man. He took the world by the storm a few years ago, and it was all him. Now, they lose a few players. They've added on some new. It's kind of a turnover in some of the roster, but the constant is Lance Leipold. And Leipold has done what so many people didn't think was possible in Lawrence, Kansas these days. All of a sudden, and you got to strike while the iron's hot. We talked about that when we previewed the ACC in Stanford. Stanford, man, you got a major rebuilding yet now. If they would have had the conference realignment and things like that when Jim Harbaugh or Andrew Luck were there, it'd be a different story. So these non-traditional powers have to strike while the iron's hot, and Kansas is doing it with the alums, with the commitment to their new stadium. So, they got a guy in Leipold, and they've identified, and they've been able to hold on to him. He could have taken a number of jobs. So Daniels is back. What I also know is that they were 1-5 in one-score games. That usually will kind of even out. If they're in 6 one-score games, 3-3, 4-2, whatever, it's probably going to be better than 1-5. The schedule: 4 of the 5 in my bottom tier are on their schedule: Arizona, West Virginia, Central Florida, and Oklahoma State. I mean, at Missouri is going to be a tough one. So 2-1 non-conference against Fresno State and Wagner, and lose at Missouri. Maybe they got a fighting chance at Missouri, without a doubt. I think they win all of those other 4 games. That's 6-1 getting into some of the tougher games. It's only 6.5. It's juiced to minus 152. But I think a lot of things in place. Let's cross our fingers with Jalen Daniels and his health. I like the Kansas Jayhawks to go over the number this year.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Kansas loses one of their all-time leading rushers in Devin Neal, a guy who rushed in his career in Lawrence for over 4,300 yards. So that's a big loss. So it makes it even more so in the Jayhawks case that it's all about Jalen Daniels. You hate to put all the expectations on the shoulders of one player, and certainly they'll have to get contributions from the whole team, but they've got to get Daniels healthy, as you said. He had back issues last year, I think, that hindered him throughout the season, and he's got to play well. Last year, he threw 12 interceptions. Again, I don't think he was at 100% health wise, but he needs to return. You talked about a few years ago when he was playing really well. I think that was the season back in 2022, passed for over 2,000 yards, completed 66% of his throws, 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, running all over the field. I mean, he was really a dynamic quarterback, one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in college football that year, and they need him to return to that form. And like you indicated, Lance Leipold, what he's been able to accomplish at Kansas, a school obviously associated with big time basketball, but a struggling FBS Power Four football program. What he's been able to do there is certainly commendable and deserves respect. But I think if Jalen Daniels is healthy, Kansas might be a team. I don't think they've got enough horses to win the conference, but they could certainly have a say in who does.
Another thing I failed to mention, the number one seed, the favorite in the Big 12 championship game, the Iowa State Cyclones, they beat them last year. They went to the next week, they went to Provo, Utah. BYU was 11-2. One of their 2 losses at home, their only home loss of the season was the Kansas Jayhawks in that one, a low scoring game. And then they knocked Colorado out of there. So they beat the number one seed in Iowa State. They knocked BYU out of contention, out of the conference championship game, and then knocked Colorado out of the national championship conference championship game. So they did have that little 3-week stretch where they were pretty good last year. So you pull for some of the teams the non-historical powers, and Kansas is one of them. They've got some tangible things going on that there's some pieces in place to kind of build upon. All right, let's go to talking about long-time success. And it came to a screeching halt last year. And you wonder about an old coach, the most tenured coach in the Big 12, at least at their particular school. And that's Mike Gundy at his alma mater in Stillwater, Oklahoma. He has certainly had his little brushes with controversy over the years. We know about that. But the record was unbelievable. His first year, he had a losing record. His next 19, he has winning records, not 500 records, not non-losing seasons, but 18 in a row winning seasons in Stillwater, and most of those being little brother to the Sooners in state. So he has his worst season ever at 3-9 last year, and it just looks like an older coach who doesn't want to adapt to the new responsibilities in roster building in college football. And that's the biggest question. Is he doing it? We look at it too. They brought in 40 new players, give or take a few, for this year's roster. So I'm not sure what the quality of it is, but he at least hustled some other rosters. So 3.5, you're looking more for the conference win. So we'll go to the Big 12, 3.5. So they got to go 500 in a very balanced league to do it. They're clearly in the lower tier. They're in your lower tier as well. But 4-4, 500, this may be a reputation line a little bit built on, well, last year might be the outlier for Mike Gundy. Well, it might be the sign of things to come. Keep in mind, he let go of both of his coordinators, basically cleaned house with his staff. Usually, that's the step before they let you go. We'll see. Mike Gundy has been a hell of a coach in Stillwater. There's no doubt he has gotten just about all he can out of the expectations, the resources that he has in Stillwater. But this might be another tough season for him, Paul.
Yeah, I tell you, I had the advantage of going to the Big 12 football media days there in Frisco, Texas, at the Star, the Dallas Cowboys training facility. And Mike Gundy, when he took the podium, he told the media gathered there that he has 65 new players on this year's roster, and said he's never even seen 35 of them practice. So 35 of those 65 came in through the late portal after spring training had concluded. So he's got 65 new players, actually. 35 they've never even seen them practice. And he doesn't have a quarterback on the roster who's ever taken a snap for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So he's got some really big hurdles to overcome there. And I think Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State, I mean, I know we know about the late Boone Pickens and just all the financial support that he provided to Oklahoma State and their athletic programs, but Oklahoma State clearly doesn't have the same size of stick in these NIL rules. I mean, you've got a coach in Mike Gundy who at Oklahoma State through the years has had to recruit not only the players passed over by Texas and Texas A&M in Texas, but the ones passed over by Texas Tech, TCU, maybe SMU. He's really had to recruit some guys that other schools didn't want in many cases. They got some good ones, don't get me wrong, but in a lot of cases, they got guys that were a little bit further down the recruiting list and just did a great job of developing those guys. I don't think Mike Gundy forgot how to coach overnight, and I don't think he really lost his zest overnight. I just think the game has changed, and every team more so than ever, it's more about talent acquisition today than it is about on the field coaching. A lot of people disagree with that, but you got to have the players, and there's such a disparity in the NIL coffers of these schools. But Oklahoma State, they're a team that played for the Big 12 championship, played Texas, as we recall, for the last year. Texas was in the Big 12 in 2023, and then last year they go 3-9. And entering this year, I don't think it's any better than last year. I mean, I look at the Power 4 teams, and there's only 2 Power 4 teams that I can clearly say have a lower power rating than Oklahoma State, and those 2 teams being Purdue and Stanford. Other than that, I cannot unequivocally say any Power 4 team has a lower power rating than Oklahoma State. They've got just really don't have any gimmies in conference play. I mean, they've got actually a 9-game conference schedule in the Big 12. They don't draw West Virginia. They play Arizona and UCF on the road. To lose this bet, they've got to go 4-5 in a very balanced, strong midsection Big 12. I just don't see them winning 4 games in this league. I really like this play. Oklahoma State under 3.5 conference wins in the Big 12, minus 177 there at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, 4-4 is going to be tough for Oklahoma State. There's no doubt about that. So, kind of a shame. It might be the last year for him, huh, Paul?
You have to wonder. I think we'll see whether it be the administration's choice or the coach's choice. I think at the end of this season and in the coming seasons, until we have a change in the structure where teams are able to compete on a more level playing field, I think some of the longer in the tooth coaches, the older coaches, will probably be getting out or perhaps forced out. So we'll see how that goes. But I would think Mike Gundy certainly could be, towards the end of his coaching career there at Oklahoma State.
Friday night game in Ames, Iowa, cost them appearance in the national championship game back in 2011. That was their only loss. They would have played LSU in the national championship game. They lost, and that allowed Alabama to get in through the back door, and they took advantage of it. Let's go on to one that we both had last year, and, well, their total has increased a little bit this year. The Houston Cougars and Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz has won wherever he's been. That number was 2.5 last year. They went 4-8, but they clinched it very early. Lost their last 4 games last year. This year it is 6.5. I am going to take Willie Fritz over till he burns me. I'm a believer. And Georgia Southern, Tulane, that was an unbelievable. You want to talk about what Lance Leipold has done at Lawrence, Kansas, what Willie Fritz did at Tulane. Summerall's doing a nice job of sustaining it, but Fritz had the tougher job. It was in the dumps when he took it over. So they returned a ton of starters. You want to talk about booster support for Tita? Well, he's going to give him some money. Doesn't just give the basketball team money. Almost every building on campus is named after him. But the Houston Cougars, they get A&M transfer quarterback Connor Wegman to join a bunch of returning starters. They also have a doable schedule, so they'll win against Stephen F. Austin and Rice. In their other non-conference game, they go to Corvallis to take on Oregon State. Well, we all know Oregon State is not what they used to be. Not saying it's a layup; it could be tricky, but not as tough of a task as well when Jonathan Smith had it going on when they were in the Pac-12 there. They play 4 of the 5 in my lower tier in the Big 12. So 2, maybe 3 non-conference wins, 4 more there. Man, that would get us our 7. So I just think that I know this. Willie Houston's going to be better. They'll be better this year, and they'll be probably better the next year. He didn't build it overnight with gimmicks and at Uptown in New Orleans at Tulane, and he's not going to do that with gimmicks here. They also, because he had a talent deficiency a lot of games, he kind of milked the clock and kind of shortened the game a little bit, and you could see their defensive numbers, yards they was they held opponents to way below their average yards and points to kind of keep them in games, and they stole some of those games. The big one was against Utah in Houston. But I know they're going to be better. It's just a matter of how much better that they're going to be in the second year for Willie Fritz, because we talk about when you take over a program and fire their coach, that was a tough assignment for him last year. They were picked to finish last or second to last in the Big 12 by everybody. This year, he's got a much improved roster. So I'm going to take Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars over 6.5.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, Willie Fritz is a big-time football coach, an old-time football coach, got a little tougher edge than some of these new guys these days. But Willie Fritz, I mean, he won at Tulane. Before that, places like Sam Houston State University. So big-time football coach that knows how to do it without question. And Connor Wegman, I think so much of it comes down to Wegman, a guy who was a 5-star recruit. They were initially signed by Texas A&M. Last year, he had some injury issues fairly early in the year. Eventually, they went to Marcel Reed, pretty much, determined he would be their quarterback in 2025. Reed would be. So the writing on the wall, Wegman got in the portal, lands with Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars. So it's going to be interesting. I think, it's a tough league, but he's an excellent coach. And, I'll be pulling for you there. And I think Wegman needs to up his play. I think he was a slight disappointment at Texas A&M. But again, a lot of people are really high on his physical tools. So we'll see how those Cougars do. And hopefully they'll get you to 7 wins there.
Paul, touching on a couple of other teams, and that's we don't have any picks, but some teams that certainly garner some of the conversation. Start off with Kansas State and that big game in Week 0 in Dublin with Iowa State. Going to be really good. And I guess all eyes are on Avery Johnson, the 5-star who they kind of nudged Will Howard out of the way and gave him the reins early. And can he continue to be more of a dependable passer? We know he can make throws at times and then sometimes really miss some throws and make some poor decisions. With more experience, those things usually improve. But we know his athleticism, it's outmatched. And if he can be as dangerous with his arm that he is with his legs, and well, they got something. But 8.5 is, some people when you hear them talk about Kansas State, they say, man, that might be low. But again, the balance of this league. But 8.5, and also Arizona State. We talk about everybody back, but Scatterboo, who was put on a show down at the Superdome, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans. So, and I thought it was good for the league too. Even in a loss, Arizona State certainly was well respected. It was well respectable of the Big 12 in that playoff game. But Kansas State and Arizona State, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Avery Johnson starting with Kansas State. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. He threw 10 interceptions last year. No question about his athleticism. This guy's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the nation, but he's just got to get a little more polish as a quarterback there at Kansas State. One thing that hurts is the loss of DJ Giddens, their running back, who's expired his eligibility. He rushed for a total of over 2,500 yards over the last 2 seasons. So that's a big loss, but they've won 9 games or more in each of the last 3 seasons. And one thing they want to turn around, and this was kind of a byproduct of Avery Johnson's turnover woes last year, but they were -1 in the turnover category last year in 2024. The previous 3 seasons, they were a combined +27. So Kansas State typically wins that, historically they kind of win the turnover battle, win the special teams battle, play solid defense, and that's how they win. So they need to get back to protecting the football and winning that turnover battle. And then, as you said, with Arizona State, they've got basically everybody back except for a guy who rushed for a little over 1,700 yards. So a big loss there in Cam Scattaboo, but they do pick up Kanye Udo from Army, a guy who rushed for over 1,100 yards last year for the Black Knights. He certainly won't replace all of Scattaboo's productivity, but he'll replace some of it. I think one thing, I mean, they've got a lot of people back. I'll just quickly touch on that. Of course, Sam Levitt, their quarterback, man, he was dynamite last year. Their 1,000-yard receiver, Jordan Tyson, back. Just about every key player on the defense that was probably the best in the Big 12 last year back as well. So really like this Arizona State team. You mentioned the Texas game. A lot of there were some questionable calls in that game. Had they gone Arizona State's way, Sun Devils very well, probably might's probably too light of a word. They probably would have won the game had those calls went their way. So they were toe-to-toe with the Texas Longhorns in that playoff game. But it's easier to be the hunter than it is the hunted. And last year they were the hunter. They were picked dead last in the conference. This year there's going to be some teams hunting the Sun Devils. I think it was interesting to note Kenny Dillingham, I think last week after one of their very first practices, talking about, hey, if we're a 4-8 team, I guess that was an okay workout. If we're a 6-6 team, that's what it looks like. I saw guys, they were looking okay, but there wasn't any passion, and they looked like they're just going through the motions. He's trying to light a fire under his team because he knows it's going to be a different ride this time around. It'll be interesting to see if now that they're the hunted, can the Sun Devils do it once again?
Oh, that's one of my storylines of the college football season this year, and that is SMU, Arizona State, and Indiana. These non-traditional powers who had these super seasons, who all participated in the first expanded 12-team playoff. I mean, they usually have to use a horse racing term, a bounce year after a big race. A golfer after a 59 round or low 60s. I mean, that next day is usually a little bit tougher. So, and especially, where's the hunger factor? So it'll be interesting. Certainly, but that's my biggest concern with Arizona State. I think Levitt's a star. He's got a feel. He's got arm strength, but he has some athleticism, and he's got a competitive spirit. He's a winner, man. And Dillingham, I mean, he's got some momentum, man. He got some momentum, and so they have something to build upon. But I bet, do they have that? Those workouts as grinding as like they were maybe last year. We will see. The other team that's going to throw in their mystery team, just on the opposite, guy wins every year and has won BCS bowl games and had undefeated seasons in this. But Kyle Whittingham, and a lot was on the health or non-health of Cam Rising, but still, this is a dip for Kyle Whittingham. He doesn't have seasons like that. But man, you go into Las Vegas in the Big 12. The Big 12 media days. He was raving over his new quarterback, Devin Dampier, the transfer from New Mexico. So he says, "Oh, you're talking about newcomer of the year? No, he's going to be the MVP, offensive MVP." Whittingham, it's interesting. They got some back, and we know he can coach. And some of us were a little surprised he didn't retire because there were some hints that he might last season. But I'm interested to see what kind of year Utah has bouncing back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Utah, and it might be the right pick, but they're a real trendy pick. I mean, they went 5-7 last year. That's not the kind of years that Kyle Whittingham is used to having. And perhaps if they would have, won the Big 12 and made the college football playoff, we might be talking about a different coach than Kyle Whittingham. But I think he wants to go out on a higher note than a losing record, because that historically is not who he has been. And they went to New Mexico, and they first of all found their offensive coordinator, Jason Beck, with the Lobos there. And he happened to have a pretty good athletic quarterback on hand in Albuquerque in Devin Dampier. But Devin Dampier, I mean, I know some people have said that he's a good, Heisman Trophy long shot pick, which he might be because his odds are pretty long. But he threw 12 interceptions last year in the Mountain West versus far inferior competition. I mean, and you can say he has a better supporting cast now at Utah, and that is certainly true as well. But he had 5 games where he threw 2 interceptions or more, and he threw 3 interceptions against Utah State. So he's got to take better care of the football. This is too tight of a league to be loosey-goosey with the football. And hopefully that was kind of a one-off and more reflective of just being inexperienced, and they can coach him up a little bit, and he can take better care of the ball. But his athleticism, there's no question about it. I think that translates to any level. He threw for over 2,700 last year at New Mexico, ran for over 1,100. He's going to be a huge threat in the running game, almost 4,000 total yards. So Utah, just another team in that Big 12 that is so very interesting and will play a big role in who advances to the college football playoff out of that league.
And finally, we'll touch on the Colorado Rockies. And, well, you talk about Colorado, they're going to get a lot of attention. And, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, has done a lot for them. I mean, just on the General University commercials, and they use him to promote their admissions. Their applications are up. I mean, so he's provided a spark. There is no doubt. But it seems to be a lot of sizzle and sometimes missing a little steak. Now they were still mathematically alive very late until they went into Arrowhead Stadium and lost to the Kansas Jayhawks. They couldn't stop them at all, and that's where it seems like, although the roster is complete makeover, Shador and Travis Hunter are gone. Here comes the quarterback in from Liberty, who's a really nice quarterback. There's no doubt, but the roster is constructed like a flag football or 7-on-7 team. There's no interior lineman, and if you can't stop the run and you can't run the ball, it's still football. I mean, it's not flag, it's not 7-on-7, and they're going to have their time. A lot of people were on Shador for kind of, I guess, compounding losses by not just taking a 6 or 7 yard sack, but trying to scramble back and make things happen. He was running for his life a lot of times. And the protection is going to be a big issue for the new quarterback as well. So until they improve that part of their team, they're going to have a ceiling. They'll be fun. They'll be exciting. They'll pull some things off at the end. They'll have some skill position guys. Yes, sometimes the guy who played defensive back and wide receiver, you're going to have some skill guys. They're good in there, but they sorely need some interior linemen, and they just don't seem to have those again with all their new additions. Colorado did hit their over last year. The first year they did not, but they did hit their over last year. But in their over under this year is at 5.5. So 500 would cash a ticket. Overs minus 117 at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what direction Colorado goes this year. I mean, obviously, you lose a guy like Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, and you're losing basically a first-team All-American wide receiver and a first-team All-America cornerback. So there's kind of a double whammy there. And Shador Sanders, whether people like his personality, like him, love him, or loathe him, that guy did. He took a beating. I mean, he stayed out there. He played. He wasn't, sitting out games and all that. I mean, he took a beating. I don't know how many sacks he took the 2 years he was there at Colorado, but it was probably more than anybody over that 2-year period in 2023 and 2024. They've got Jordan Seaton back at left tackle, who'll be a true sophomore, one of the top offensive line recruits in that class. They got a guy out of Memphis, I believe, first team American Athletic Conference lineman, and another guy or two. So I think they'll be a little bit better on the offensive line, but still, to your point, I don't think they're quite physical enough and tough enough of a running team and stopping the run type program, to be, perhaps at the very upper end of the spectrum. But they bring in Caden Salter, as you mentioned, from Liberty. In 3 years there as the Flame starter, passed for over 5,800 yards. And back in 2022, I believe it was, he rushed for almost 1,100 yards. So in a single season. So this guy can run the football. He's a guy from Cedar Hill, Texas, outside of Dallas. I think he's going to initially start the season as Colorado's starter. He'll start the home game against Georgia Tech, which is just one of the many great games we have that first week of the college football season. But they have a quarterback in waiting, 5-star Julian Lewis out of Carrollton, Georgia, a guy who initially was supposed to be a senior in high school this year. But he reclassified, and he's a 17-year-old college freshman with loads of talent. but I think Salter gets the initial call. It'll be interesting to see when and if Julian Lewis takes over under center for the Colorado Buffaloes.
I'm fine with Julian Lewis taking those first snaps against Georgia Tech because I got some of those paper tickets on the Yellow Jackets in that one. So we'll see about that. He might be good, but I'll take my chances against a 17-year-old quarterback in his first action. But yeah, that'll be another good one. That's our Friday night. Those two games to kind of kick off the season with that Auburn Baylor game, and then also Colorado and Georgia Tech. Well, Paul's got the pick on Baylor in that one, and I've got the pick on Georgia Tech in the Colorado game. So we do this every Tuesday and Thursday live here on College Sports Rush YouTube channel. I'm Jimmy Ott. It's Paul Stone. We'll look at the rest of the conferences, all of the group of 5 leagues in the independent. So we'll do that on Tuesday. And next Thursday, we will be giving out picks with our analysis and information for week 0. Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott. We'll see you next week again every Tuesday, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on College Sports Rush YouTube channel.